kicked out as a teen for false rumors spread by my twin sister. Years later, parents see my success and demand money after they abandoned me. I am a 28-year-old man with a twin sister, and our childhood was marked by a stark contrast in the way we were treated by our parents. While I was viewed as the golden child, my sister often felt like the black sheep. This favoritism set off a chain of events that ultimately led to her being kicked out of our home as a teenager due to false rumors I spread. A troubled childhood. Growing up, my parents genuinely believed I was destined for greatness. My sister, on the other hand, was often overshadowed by my achievements. They constantly compared us, which made her feel like she could never measure up. While I enjoyed extravagant birthday parties filled with friends, she seemed like an afterthought, often spending her special days alone or with just a few acquaintances. I remember having sleepovers and going out with friends, while she was left at home, unable to invite anyone over. It was clear that our parents favored me, and I took their attention for granted, never realizing how much it hurt her. As the years went by, their favoritism morphed into emotional abuse directed at her. They would openly mock her grades and belittle her interests, creating an environment where she felt she could never succeed. Although she excelled in sports, our parents pushed her to focus solely on her studies, just as they did with me. I noticed how their pressure left her feeling helpless and frustrated, but instead of empathizing with her, I allowed myself to bask in their approval. Escalation of conflict. Things came to a head during her sophomore year, when she was grounded for having Snapchat on her phone. In my parents' eyes, this was a severe breach of trust. I remember how they exploded with anger, tearing her room apart and taking her door off its hinges to punish her. Instead of supporting her, I saw this as an opportunity to further my own position in our parents' eyes. I started to manipulate the situation to my advantage, lying about her and making accusations that only fueled my parents' anger toward her. My jealousy grew as I watched her make friends while I struggled socially. I became resentful that she could connect with people so easily, while I often felt awkward and out of place. This jealousy reached its peak on our 14th birthday. None of my friends showed up for me, while she celebrated with her friends, enjoying ice cream and laughter. In a fit of rage, I decided to spread false rumors about her at school, claiming she was a spoiled brat, and alleging that she physically abused me at home. To make my lies more convincing, I began to inflict injuries on myself, creating black eyes and bruises to show everyone as proof of her supposed violence. Isolation and betrayal. As the rumors took hold, even my friends started to distance themselves from her. I witnessed invitations to hang out dwindle, and I felt a strange satisfaction knowing that my lies were working. I reveled in the attention I received as the victim of her supposed bullying, oblivious to the damage I was inflicting on her life. One day, she approached me, visibly upset, and pleaded with me to stop lying about her. I shrugged her off, smirking as I told her that she deserved to be alone. I had no idea how much pain my betrayal was causing her. All I cared about was maintaining my status as the favored child in our parents' eyes. Eventually, the rumors reached our principal's ears. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I entered his office with my sister and our parents. My heart raced, but I was ready to stick to my story. When asked about the allegations, I painted a vivid picture of my sister as a bully who lashed out at me when our parents weren't around. I could see the shock on her face as I spun my tale. My mother began to cry, and my father assured me that he would protect me. The more they believed me, the more I felt I had won. Despite my sister's desperate attempts to defend herself, the principal sided with me, suspending her for 10 days and branding her as a bully. I felt a rush of satisfaction. My plan had worked. But as we left the principal's office, I noticed the pain etched on my sister's face, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of guilt. I brushed it aside, too caught up in the victory. Forced out of our home. When we got home, everything changed. My father, fueled by anger and embarrassment, began packing my sister's belongings. I watched in shock as he shouted that a bully like her didn't deserve to live under his roof. She fell to her knees, begging him not to throw her out, but I felt no remorse. I had created this situation, and it felt too late to turn back. I knew I had crossed a line, but the fear of losing my parents' approval was stronger. When our grandmother arrived, I saw her gather my sister's things and help her into the car. My heart raced as she confronted my parents, fiercely defending my sister, and threatening to involve the police if they ever treated her that way again. I stood frozen as my grandmother stood up to my parents, revealing a strength I never knew she had. Leaving our childhood home was surreal. I had become a bystander in a situation I had orchestrated. My sister's pain was palpable as she drove away with our grandmother, and I was left to grapple with the chaos I had caused. I never expected that my need for attention and approval would lead to such devastation. The aftermath. After my sister left, I felt an emptiness settle within me. My parents, consumed by their anger towards her, had lost sight of their own daughter, and I couldn't help but feel a hint of guilt gnawing at me. I had won their approval, but it came at a horrific cost. The days dragged on, and the weight of my actions began to sink in. My sister had become an outcast, all because of my lies. As time passed, I watched her absence leave a void in our home. Our parents' anger shifted to a quiet desperation, and I began to realize that I was now alone in the spotlight. The friends who once rallied around me started to pull away, questioning my version of events. The satisfaction I felt from my lies began to erode, replaced by a growing sense of shame. Eventually, I tried to reach out to my sister, but the damage was done. I understood that the bond we once shared had been severed by my betrayal. It was a harsh lesson, learning that the quest for approval can lead to losing the people you care about the most. As I navigated the empty halls of my home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had lost more than just my twin sister. I had lost a piece of myself in the process. On me, my grandmother would constantly remind me that this was not my fault and that life would eventually be okay. I graduated high school with good grades and was looking forward to college, where I hoped to have a better life. It was only when I went away to college that I first experienced what freedom felt like. For the first time, no one was watching over my shoulder, no one was comparing my grades, and no one was trying to compete with me. I met new people and formed friendships with like-minded individuals. Despite the emotional and physical scars I had sustained over the years due to my family and peers, I concentrated on putting it all behind me and enjoying the college experience as much as I could. During this time, I discovered my knack for content writing. I had always wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't sure if it would be sustainable. Hence, I decided to put my dream on hold. To earn some side money, I started writing as a freelancer, signing up on various platforms that helped me secure jobs with prominent clients. This is how I slowly began building a portfolio of my work. Throughout college, I maintained this side hustle and never asked for a penny from my parents. Instead of jumping into a corporate job after graduation, I realized I could pursue content writing full-time. I was doing quite well, thanks to the multiple clients and the long-term professional relationships I had developed, which allowed me to work on various projects for them. Establishing a legitimate freelancing career not only made me financially independent, but also allowed me to travel the world as a digital nomad. Traveling helped heal me from my past, even though it was definitely not easy. I saved up as much as I could and took a chance on myself. Over the years, I have seen so much of the world and yet have so much left to explore. The only person I considered family throughout this journey was my grandmother, and I absolutely adored her. She was sad when I moved out, but she understood that I needed to be independent. Despite my hectic schedule, I always made it a point to be there for her whenever I could. I would visit her on weekends, sharing meals or simply sitting on the porch engrossed in conversations that ranged from childhood tales to more recent happenings. I would dedicate entire afternoons to helping her with household chores or accompanying her to the local park for leisurely walks. Recently, I completed one of the most important projects of my career. I can't mention the brand, but I was extremely lucky to write blogs and product descriptions for them. After the project wrapped up, I requested the team I worked with to leave positive reviews on my website, and they were more than happy to do so. I then took screenshots of some of their reviews to post on my Instagram, as I knew working with this brand was a huge deal. As expected, many other content writers reached out to congratulate me on my professional success and even reposted my story to help spread the word. This is how I started receiving messages from strangers needing help with their websites. My relatives noticed my success as well, and some of them reached out to congratulate me. Eventually, I was contacted by my college's principal, who had reached out after seeing my success and wanted me to come back for a seminar to talk to students about building a career as a content writer. I was quite nervous, as I don't do well with public speaking, but I decided to take a chance and agreed. When I found myself standing before eager faces, sharing my experiences and insights, I felt like my life had come full circle. I spoke about the struggles I faced and how I worked hard to sustain myself despite all the hard days. It was honestly a fulfilling experience to empower others and contribute to the growth of the writers' community. Some of my clips started going viral on Facebook groups, and people resonated with my story. It felt good to finally be recognized for my hard work. Just last week, I was invited to speak on a local news channel about the benefits of content writing. They wanted me to share my journey and insights with their viewers. I was nervous but also excited for the opportunity. During the show, I discussed my experiences, the importance of client reviews, and how a simple appreciation post could open doors to incredible opportunities. The chance to reach a broader audience and inspire more individuals in the field was both humbling and exhilarating. When it finally aired, I shared some clips on my Instagram, proud to have been invited to a TV show. This is how my relatives and cousins began to discover how well I was doing in my career. My parents, who never spoke about me to anyone, had no idea that I was working with popular brands and getting invited to TV shows. Word quickly spread within my family, and I guess this TV interview finally reached my parents' ears. Just a few days later, while I was working on another project with my phone on silent, I checked my messages afterward to find 6 missed calls from my mom. I was honestly shocked to see her name pop up on my phone. It had been a long time since she had called. After all those years of silence, I couldn't fathom why she was reaching out. Hesitantly, I called her back, and she picked up immediately. I asked if everything was okay, and my mom started congratulating me. My dad, probably sitting right there with her, jumped into the conversation, inquiring about my life and well-being. I answered their questions without much thought. It didn't strike me as unusual until they began asking how much I was earning these days. I told them that it was none of their business. My dad replied that we were family, so I shouldn't feel shy about telling them my income. I told him I was doing well financially, but hearing this, my mom then began saying how hard their life was these days. My brow furrowed in suspicion as I listened. Our conversation went something like this: "Mom, we are retired now, and we have been wanting to renovate the house for a while. It's not in the best shape, but we have no savings left." Me: "Okay, Mom. Mom, your success has given us hope. After watching your TV interview today, we thought maybe you could help us out by paying for the renovations. Dad, after all, we're family. You shouldn't hesitate to share some of your earnings with us. We could really use your help." I was incredulous. Me: "Are you joking with me? Why are you asking me for money when you haven't even talked to me for years? I appreciate the congratulations, but I am not going to help you out in any way." Hearing this, my mom started saying I was being selfish and that I needed to support them as a family. My dad added that as my parents, they deserved to be looked after, and this was the least I could do. I was furious and wanted to give them a piece of my mind. Suddenly, I had an idea. Instead of just arguing with them, I decided to teach them a lesson for forever, thinking they could mooch off me after mistreating me all those years ago. I told my parents that I was willing to help them if, and only if, they agreed to my demands. My dad curiously asked what it was. Without hesitation, I laid out my demand. If they wanted my help, they had to publicly admit in front of our family and friends that I was the mastermind behind the hurtful rumors that had tarnished my reputation. I wanted them to humiliate me the same way they had humiliated me by believing my brother's lies and manipulations. I wanted them to take accountability for their actions and acknowledge the pain they had caused. Hearing my impossible condition, my dad began to question the necessity of such an admission. My mom told me that this was quite unnecessary and that we could have a private discussion without involving others, but I held my ground. This condition was non-negotiable, a prerequisite for any assistance they wanted me to offer in the future. As the tension escalated, my dad raised his voice, asserting his role as my father and emphasizing that it was my duty to help my family in need. My mom, in a last-ditch effort, urged me to do the right thing and help them, emphasizing the years they had spent raising me. I couldn't help but find irony in their sudden appeal. I reminded them of the past, of the fact that they had kicked me out, and it was my grandmother who had raised me, not them. They grew more agitated, but I told them firmly that if they wanted to establish contact with me and seek my financial assistance from now on, the truth needed to be acknowledged publicly, and my brother needed to face the consequences of his actions. Since that conversation, my parents have been trying to call me incessantly, but I've been ignoring their calls. I'm starting to regret even calling them back that day. I would like to know if I would really be in a hole if I didn't help my parents at all.